Late in the evening, in the mountains of North Carolina, there's an old legend that was handed down generation after generation of a man appearing among the trees in the big timber in the area of Flat Rock, North Carolina, searching for something. This is the legend of Abram Cavendall and the story of the lost treasure of Flat Rock, a true legend. Now this story comes from a part of the country of North Carolina, the mountains of West Carolina. We'll zoom down here in on. This is an old story that's 230 years old or more. It comes from an area called Flat Rock, just south of Asheville, north of Spartanburg, north of South Carolina. Here's the area. Beautiful country through there. And there's a big state park there too, Flat Rock. Now, old Abraham, he was born in 1719. And he worked his way he was born around Hudson River in New York. And he worked his way through probably the wilderness of them days, down into West Virginia, North Carolina, and ended up in the western part of North Carolina, there where he died in 1812. And this story that I've read about, the ancestry, he'd worked his way in these militias all through England, and by 1740s, he was along the coast of North Carolina defending the British shipping from the Spanish galleons and stuff raiding the harbors all the time. And by the 1760s, he was leading militias in North Carolina. And yes, he was a patriot in the Revolutionary War too. He served a lot of time in these military and militias. But after the wars, he worked his way inward in the 1780s in North Carolina, acquiring land. And he started out with little homes like this, just simple little log cabins across the frontier. He'd married his wife in 1743, Elizabeth Fiddler, in his early years. And they had 14 children, they say. But he worked his way in here around Hendersonville, different counties, a place called Flat Rock. Beautiful country. And he started up a little tavern that looked like this. These are not the original pictures. This is a tavern of old Davy Crockett's tavern in Jefferson City, Tennessee. I'm just sharing pictures that I have that would go along with this. And his tavern was along the Budscombe Turnpike at that time. You can see here, this is what's left of the old turnpike. The old modern roads has bypassed all the old roads. A lot of history passed through these old roads that's just being forgotten about. Old history. And the taverns had stuff like this in it, where people traveling through would stay the night, stay at an inn, and they'd feed them, take care of them. Says he'd also had a distillery and an innkeeper, a tavern, and a bunch of other things, and farming too. And this is about what you look like inside them. And he had acquired so much land that he donated some of his land here to build a church in Mud Creek Baptist Church in 1804. This is just catching you up on the history And no, this is not true pictures, but this is just pictures to go along with the stories. This is pictures of my old ancestry. He had 14 children. Now, his first wife died around 1804, and he married his second wife of Bathsheba in 1805. He accumulated a lot of money as time went on, because he made his guests pay with silver and gold coins. And he had acquired 6,000 acres in all of his time here. But he gave a lot of it to his kids and donated a lot of land. And yes, they said he had a few slaves too that worked the tavern. It was a busy place, they say, in the old story. Well, there's two stories to this, but they both end the same way. But one story is that he was accumulating so much money, and there was no banks in them days. So people would usually hide their money or put it up somewhere. So there was no banks. So he was way out here in the middle of this wilderness, in these wooded areas, and he was afraid somebody might rob him, take everything he had. So he's going to hide his money. And another story is that he married his second wife, and she liked to spend money. She liked to buy stuff. And he'd think if he didn't hide some of it or nothing, he wouldn't have none. She'd spend it all. So that's the two different stories. But it all come down to the same story. That he just put all of his money in a big old wash pot. All he could accumulate and save up. And one middle of the night, he got his slaves up, a couple of them, and blindfolded them, middle of the night. And they carried this up into the woods, up into a holler. They called Pleasant Holler, Ridge, back in there, what the story goes. And they crisscrossed the creek 2 or 3 times, blindfolded now, people carried it. And they come across a big old tree that he decided he wanted to finally bury it at. So he took the blindfolds off of them, and they buried it. Well, then when they buried it and everything, he put the blindfolds back on them, and they went back towards the house. They just say they could just remember when they questioned them how they got there and how they got back. They just remember crossing the creek 2 or 3 different times and going through the woods on the side of a ridge. And they said they buried it at the end of a big old white oak stooping tree. Big, massive tree. Well, as time would have it, later on, he needed this money. And he was going to go find it. He needed some of it. Story goes, one of them. And he never come back home. Well, they found him the next day in the creek, face down. He drowned. He'd fell. Evidently, he'd fell, slipped and fell and hit his head and drowned in the creek. Well, nobody knowed where the money was at. And the other story goes that didn't happen. His second wife said that it didn't happen. He'd got real bad sick and got down. And he knew he was about to die, and he tried to tell his sons and his family where he hid the money. But he was so badly in shape that they couldn't understand what he was saying, so he died without them understanding where it was buried at. So they questioned the slaves, which he blindfolded, to take up there and hide the money. Well, all they know is they went up a ridge, through the woods a couple of miles, crossed the creek 2 or 3 times, and when they took the blindfolds off, they was under a big old white oak tree stooping down, the limbs was, and they buried it there. And they know he put the blindfolds back on, and he led them back home. That's all they know. Well, to this day, nobody never knowed where that treasure was buried. That's just an old legend. And as time went on, not long after he died, people reported seeing in this certain area that they would see a man walking among the trees or just appearing, shaped like a man, ghost ghost of a man or something would appear among the trees, digging frantically, looking, searching for something, like it was trying to find something. Well, this went on time after time, people seeing this sight, and it's become an old legend. Now, to this day, that tree has never been found, they say. Nobody's ever found that treasure. And I'm not sure who all's looked for it. I'm sure it's been looked for. What treasure hasn't been looked for? So I just don't know. There's just so much legends out there, so many stories. You don't know what's hidden in these mountains. Even things you don't even know about. That was surprising. But I reckon that treasure has never been found. Never been found. So this is just one of many legends of these mountains. Mystery. You never know. This Pleasant Branch here in Flat Rock, they even teased their kids through generations, calling it, if you don't mind, to be good, the booger man of Pleasant Branch, Booger Holler, will come and get you. Now, Abraham was buried on his own land, but they got a marker here with his Revolutionary Patriot marker here at Mud Creek Baptist Church here in Black Creek, but he's not buried there. He's buried somewhere on his land. They're not sure where he's buried, or his first wife, Elizabeth. We're talking a story that's over 230 years old. So there you go. And I'd never know nothing about this story if it wasn't for my sister that does ancestry. From what she told me and dug up, that this is one of my fifth great grandfathers. That's all I can tell you. So I hope you enjoy these little stories. There's so many out there, legends across these mountains, that I'll try to share with you. So I want to thank you for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next time.